Hello, viewers. All of you are welcome in WSTV studio. And as you know, 2 days NATO summit that was to be held on 11th and 12th of July in Vilnius, capital city of Lithuania, is over. And it is the summit has been taking place amidst dampened spirits, much trumpeted 1 month old Ukrainian counteroffensive, backed by US NATO, has been beaten back by Russia in eastern Donetsk and southwest Zaporozhye. And with this beating back, this summit was held, in fact, amidst dampened spirits among US and NATO partners. They had been trumpeting their victory. They were anticipating the victory of Ukraine over Russian forces, but it happened otherwise. Russia has clearly beaten back the Ukrainian forces, and for that, the US and NATO, they were answerable to the members of NATO, to the world, and in this summit, they couldn't come out with any good news that they could have uh, announced, at least to themselves. Besides 31 NATO members, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and South Korea had also participated in this summit on special invitation by NATO. So these countries are not members of NATO. They are Asian powers, but they were specially invited to this NATO summit in Vilnius. Vilnius is capital city of Lithuania. NATO has set a target for its member countries, and that is that these countries would contribute to their defense budget at least 2% of their GDP. Total 2% of the GDP, at least they would contribute. And only 7% of the countries are spending this much amount who are members of NATO. Summit host Lithuania itself has pledged a robust 2.5% of its GDP on defense budget. Most importantly, in the summit, if we talk of the highlights of the summit, most importantly, NATO has issued a declaration against China on Tuesday. That means yesterday. Tuesday's NATO declaration builds itself on the alleged risk posed by China's ambitions and policies, as US and NATO put it. NATO chief has claimed that Asia Pacific is important for NATO, given that developments in this region can directly affect Euro-Atlantic security. China has issued stern warning against NATO's declaration and broadly stating its advance upon Asia. In fact, Biden wants to expand NATO mission inside Asia. And for this particular purpose, for this expansion of NATO inside Asia, Biden wants to rope in Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and even India in its net, which it wants to throw on China as well as Russia. Biden's proposal for opening NATO office in Japan could not find the way in this summit. He has made a proposal. The proposal is not new. In fact, it is a 6-month-old proposal. But in this summit, Biden has pressed for it that an office of NATO be opened in Tokyo, the capital city of Japan. But this proposal was staunchly opposed by France. France said that the purpose of NATO treaty is to defend the Atlantic region, and going outside it would endanger the security of Atlantic region. President Macron of France, he was of the view that if forces are expended over a larger region that may encompass the Indo-Pacific region, the security of Atlantic itself may be in danger. So due to opposition of France and few other countries that had supported France, this proposal of Biden, this could not find its way, and the proposal had to be postponed, if not dropped. United States under Biden has now to depend upon the Quad military alliance, or besides it, the bilateral collaborations in its war against China. So the effort of United States to rope in other countries in its immediate encirclement of China, that has failed. 8 countries alongside Russian border, and this Russian border with Europe is 1,000 kilometers long. On this border, these 8 countries which are having borders touching with Russia, they will have 4,000 to 5,000 deployment of NATO forces. This was the proposal, the formal proposal made at NATO conference. At present, 10,232 NATO soldiers are deployed along this border, this 1,000 kilometer border. And if 4,000 to 5,000 are deployed, then this number would go at least beyond 50,000. The target is to take it to 2 lakh or 3 lakh. So a huge militarization of Europe alongside the border of Russia, that is being planned, and this summit has practically given a green signal to it. Target of this deployment is rapid mobilization of at least 3 lakh soldiers within 3 days. Within 30 days. So that in case of a need, in case of an attack, what are they telling? Within 30 days, these European powers, the powers of US and NATO, they must be enabled to mobilize at least 3 lakh soldiers immediately in a quick response, in a shock response. That is the target. The target of mobilization of NATO forces in these 8 countries. Lithuania, but is not ready for this NATO development. Rather, Lithuania says that we would take the German proposal of deploying 4,000 soldiers from German force in Lithuania. So Lithuania has not given practically a green signal to this NATO proposal of deployment of 4,000 to 5,000 soldiers from NATO. Rather, the German soldiers would be deployed. And Lithuania says that in coming 7 years, over a period of 7 years, Lithuania itself would mobilize 17 to 18,000 force, a native force, fully trained military force to defend its borders. At present, it depends upon German forces to defend its borders. North Korea Besides this, and when this uh, summit, the Vilnius summit was going on, North Korea has deliberately test fired a long range ballistic missile. And this ballistic missile, it has flown for about 74 minutes, reaching an altitude of 6,000 kilometers over a range of 1,000 kilometers in what would be the longest ever flight time for a North Korean missile. And this has terrified the Western powers. You can see how the ground is being prepared for a World War III, a new world war. The big powers are confronting each other. Western powers, they are meeting in Vilnius with ostensible purpose to encircle China, to impose and to continue the war, ongoing war upon Russia. And on the other hand, the camp that supports Russia and China, while Russia and China are being drawn closer, North Korea is test firing its missiles. And this was the longest ballistic missile, the longest range ballistic missile that North Korea has test fired simultaneous to this, alongside this Vilnius summit. United States has, on its part, United States has promised cluster bombs for Ukraine, and it has come as a surprise at least for entire civilized world. Political and military experts, they were knowing that US and NATO, they would advance step by step, and they would go to any extent to defeat Russia, to make a headway to the Eastern Hemisphere. So they have nothing to be amazed at. But the civilized world is surprised that how US, which has declared at the inception of the war, at the inception of Russia-Ukraine war, that only the arms and ammunitions for defense of Ukraine would be supplied and not for offense. Now, all sorts of destructive weapons of mass destruction are being supplied. So these cluster bombs, now US is planning to supply these cluster bombs. It has pledged to supply cluster bombs to Ukraine. Biden says that this deal of supplying cluster bombs is not new. Rather, it is part of $800 million aid that US has already pledged to render to Ukraine. These cluster bombs are a pack of hundreds of bomblets. You know, viewers, that these cluster bombs, they have been used in different parts of the world and with devastating consequences. These cluster bombs are, in fact, they are the sort of bombs which contain hundreds of bomblets. And these bombs are fired by rocket or missile, and they get spread over a vast area, a very vast region. Few of them explode instantaneously, hitting hard surface, while others lie dormant, that land on the soft surface. They lie dormant, and over a period of time, as they come in touch with human beings, with animals, vehicles, they too explode. Civilians, and especially children, get hit by them time to time. Death rate Dud rate is the rate of the bombs that get exploded immediately and that do not get exploded immediately but lie dormant. So this dud rate for Russian made bombs is 40%. For US made bombs is 3% and average is 20%. That means out of 100 bombs that Russia makes, Russia manufactures, out of that 60 explode immediately and 40 explode after a time. The bombs that US makes, they are more sensitive, their sensors are more efficient. So 97% of them explode immediately and 3% of them do not explode. On average, 20% is the dud rate. On average, these bombs, 20% of these bombs, they remain dormant and only 80% explode immediately. The bombs that remain dormant, they are a big danger for children, for working peasants, workers, and all those civilians, innocent civilians, who come in touch with them even years after the war. After the war is stopped, during war or after the war. NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg says, despite all these dangers and ignoring them, Stoltenberg says that preventing victory of Putin is more important task than any other thing. For NATO and NATO's commanders, the sole task, the central task is the defeat of Putin, the advance upon the Eastern Hemisphere, whatever be the cost of not only the lives of soldiers, but the lives of civilians too. If children die, let them die. These bomblets which come out of the bomb, the cluster bomb, they look like, and they are deliberately, they are made to look like the toys, so that when children come in touch with them, when children pick them up thinking that they are toys, so they explode, killing children. So these wolves, they don't care about anything, they don't care about lives of civilians, they don't care about lives of children. What they care about is their victory in the war, so that their chests must be full of the loot from the exploited and defeated countries. Present day, they are having an eye not only upon Russia and China, but India also, and not only India, all countries of Eastern Hemisphere. They want to loot the natural resources, the human resources. They want to have at their disposal. And through this loot, they want to prevent revolutions in their own country. Inside their countries, inside US and Europe, there is huge economic crisis. There's devaluation of money, there's price hike, there is unemployment. And these countries, these advanced capitalist countries, however big their economy may be, they are suffocating. They're suffocating inside their cocoon. And the only way out of it, they see an attacking upon the Eastern Hemisphere and enslaving the whole hemisphere, the Eastern globe. Biden says that for delivery of these cluster bombs to Ukraine, consent of allies has been taken. And he is not lying. He is speaking the truth. So the European powers may not accept it in words, but in their deeds, what they are doing, that makes clear that Biden is not lying. Consent of allied forces has been taken for delivery of these cluster bombs to Ukraine. Human rights organizations are opposing the delivery of cluster bombs to Ukraine. Britain, Canada, New Zealand, Spain, and Italy have opposed this delivery, but for the namesake, for pro forma purposes only. Germany's doublespeak can be understood very well. Germany says that though we do not support cluster bombs, but we understand US position on them. That means we do not support cluster bomb, but if US delivers it to Ukraine, we would not oppose it. So see what sort of hypocrisy, what sort of doublespeak is there. UK PM Rishi Sunak says, we are signatory to the convention and are bound by its declaration, the Convention on Cluster Bombs, that prevents any production or distribution of cluster bombs. So Rishi Sunak admits that they are signatory to the convention. They say that we are bound by the declaration. But indirectly what he is saying that US is not bound by it. No country in European Union or NATO has openly opposed this US pledge of delivering cluster bombs to Ukraine. What a hypocrisy has prevailed in this Vilnius summit. NATO may get divided over the issue, not because these leaders are opposing, but under mass pressure and the prospective protests in Europe, future protests in Europe. Definitely, the working class of Europe, working class of US also is not going to take it lightly. It is going to oppose it tooth and nail. Working class would come on roads. It has experience in these cluster bombs, how children are killed, how civilians, innocent civilians are killed through these cluster bombs, and what sort of devastation these cluster bombs bring to the regions where they are used. And not during the war, but decades after the war. The clearing of fields becomes a very, very difficult task. 2008 Convention on Cluster Munitions is there. That stands today, and majority European Union nations, they are signatories to this convention of 2008. 123 countries around the globe are signatories to this convention. This convention prohibits all production and use of cluster bombs and has specifically declared any production or distribution of these cluster bombs to be a war crime. US has used cluster bombs in so many wars, including the war on Vietnam. The impact of these bombs had fueled global protests, including in the US during the Vietnam War. While UK is saying that we are signatories to the convention and we are against these cluster bombs, UK itself is pledging to deliver long-range missiles to Ukraine. So just see the game. UK would deliver long-range missiles to Ukraine and US would deliver cluster bombs. And UK would say that we are not delivering cluster bombs because we are signatories to the convention. Finally, Ukraine expected to be a member of NATO and it was pressing very hard for this, but the summit could not agree on this because admitting Ukraine to NATO would mean that immediately NATO forces will have to enter Ukraine and they will have to confront Russia. And if NATO forces enter Ukraine, definitely, as China has warned, as China has issued very stern warning, definitely China would intervene and there would be a world war, immediate world war. So seeing that danger, viewing the danger of world war at doorstep, finally Ukraine is not admitted to NATO, and this NATO summit has resolved that during the ongoing war, Ukraine would not be admitted. Zelensky has protested on this. Zelensky says that it was not proper for the summit not to admit Ukraine to NATO and to discuss the matter in this manner. What manner we don't know, but Zelensky says that in this manner the matter should not have been discussed in NATO summit. Despite all pressure from Zelensky and Ukrainian commanders, the supporters, Ukraine could not be admitted to NATO. Finland is already admitted as 31st NATO member, and NATO is having present strength of 31 members. Sweden is in pipeline, as Hungary has withdrawn its veto against Sweden's entry into NATO, and Turkey is also ready to withdraw its veto against entry of Sweden, but subject to two conditions. First is that Turkey should be admitted to EU, European Union, and advanced US fighter jets must be given to Turkey. Turkish President Erdogan says he will try to impress upon Turkish parliament if these two conditions are met. So it is contingent. Turkey's support is contingent. So Sweden is not admitted as a NATO member, but Sweden is in pipeline. Now Ukraine is not even in pipeline. US and NATO, they are not ready to face World War III immediately. They want some time, and therefore they are not admitting Ukraine to NATO immediately. Russian President Vladimir Putin has claimed today before media that this summit is for sure a step ahead towards World War III. And President Putin is not wrong. In fact, the very purpose, the target of this summit, NATO summit at this time, and Vilnius, and as its agenda shows, the whole purpose is to advance towards World War III, inch by inch, step by step. Vilnius, where this summit is taking place, has been the site for worst of all fascist crimes against humanity and Jews in particular during World War II, with Germany as chief perpetrators of this crime at that point of time. Now again, Germany is taking part in the war preparations. Nazi assault upon Lithuania on June 22, 1941 had resulted in elimination of 210,000 Jews in less than 3 months. In less than 3 months, 210,000 Jews were killed. As these forces re-embark upon the path to a new world war, German Chancellor Scholz and its big power allies Biden, Macron, and Rishi Sunak want to cover up their footprints in the past. But interests of working class clearly demand that this dark chapter of history is not only highlighted, but necessary strategic and tactical conclusions must be essentially drawn from it. These conclusions are, in fact, indispensable for our present struggle against imperialism and fascism. So, dear viewers, with this appeal to draw these conclusions from the summit, from the agenda of these big powers, from their war efforts, we appeal to you that you must think over it, you must draw the conclusions, and you must be part of this movement, the global movement against war, imperialism, fascism, and the mother of all, capitalism. With this appeal, I take your leave, dear viewers, and we will continue meeting, exposing the agenda of these black powers and fighting against it. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.